Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are exploring the Phaedo and discovering what the heck we're here to do. What we're supposed to do while we're here. How do we live in the best possible way? How do we gain the excellence of our soul? And how do we learn what we're here to learn? Not only that, how do we know and prove what we are and where we're going? In other words, what is the soul? What is its nature? And what is its destiny after this particular incarnation, in this particular body? These are all things that are, surprise, surprise, knowable.
Wow.
And not only knowable, understandable.
Wow.
Not only understandable, you can use that knowledge and understanding to prove these things in a way where people can be benefited by that understanding and maybe even led to their own direct experience or knowledge of that, such that they will benefit.
Wow.
And of course, all those things together is our working hypothesis that we're carrying with us of what exactly an art is. Why is that important? Because Socrates has made it clear the most important thing we can do is develop the art of logos, or the art of dianoia, perhaps. Dianoia being a special word that means understanding, but not the way we talk about it, understanding physical things with our physical senses, but understanding the realm of being, that thing which is knowable, that thing which is pure, eternal, indestructible, and maybe of a similar nature, or maybe the same nature as our very soul. These are all hypotheses that we carry with us. Why? Because this is part of reading, gathering hypotheses, gathering questions. In fact, in one of the most recent episodes, Socrates outlines this as how to think. This is how you go forward, says Socrates. And he says this is his personal anecdote of his search for causes. He began as a lover of learning. So we are learning the nature of the soul. One of the aspects of the soul is our reasoning and planning. And you can be somebody motivated by that, a lover of learning, or you could be someone motivated by riches, lover of desires, or somebody motivated by fame. These are all different ways that you can be as a human being. Socrates pointed out he wanted to know why we were here. Why are things the way that they are here? So, already a lover of learning, but he is outlining his transition from a lover of learning to a lover of wisdom. A kind of jump. And he outlines a search for causes. A search for causes is needed because you can say, why are we here? In other words, you could be asking, you are in effect saying, what is the cause for us being here? Now, we need to think about that. What is the cause? He was let down because the teachers of his time only really talked about physical causes. What's the cause for you being here? Oh, you have bones and muscles. Well, that's a cause, but it's not really the cause. Why? Why do bones and sinews exist? Why do you have consciousness? Why in this kind of world? Why at this point of time? In other words, for what purpose? Now, as we're reading, we are putting together a kind of image that, hang on a second, there may be a list of causes. so Socrates is saying, why am I sitting here? Some people would point to my physical body and say, oh, that's a cause, your physical body. You've got bones. You wouldn't be able to sit up straight if you didn't have bones. Socrates says, well, hang on a second. Them bones would be boning their way off to another place if I didn't think it was best for me to be here. So there's some thought in my mind that's also a cause. In fact, a better cause. A more causal cause. So we are imagining, hang on a second, there's a puzzle here, and that's what we're doing. As readers, as philosophers, as human beings, we have to look for puzzles. We have to look for questions in our reality, but specifically questions in the text. Why? Because these questions are part of the logos. The text is written according to the logos that Socrates had a mastership of, perhaps, seeing as he's talking about how this is what we need to do while we're here. This is our work, and if you can complete that work, you can upgrade yourself into a different kind of incarnation. If that's the case, then maybe Socrates has himself mastered this art. And so this is what he's sharing. He wants to pass on this art of the logos. So we need to look for puzzles, look for questions, and then develop hypotheses of what are possible answers. Now, one question is, hang on a second, yeah, you need bones. That is a cause, but Socrates is saying that wasn't sufficient. The teachers of the time were not sufficiently answering his question. And he was pointing to his idea of what's best, what's most just for him to do. If I thought it was best and most just for me not to be here, I wouldn't be sitting here in this prison cell, about to be executed for doing philosophy. So where's the question there? Well, we're talking about causes. One technique of discovering causes is ousia. Take the thing and turn it about upon itself. Socrates has been giving us clues about this. He has mentioned in a few paragraphs back, playing with my lights, that beautiful things are beautiful because of beauty. Greatness is great because of greatness itself. So he's saying, hey, try taking the word and folding it upon itself. Which is interesting because that's a kind of ousia. Ousia being that nature of that which we seek in knowledge, the nature of truth and being. Also, it's in the nature of our the eye of the soul that allows us to apprehend it. We talked about that last time. Ontology, what exists. There are levels of existence. One level is knowable, the realm of being. One level is only opinable, access to opinions, the physical world. So this is ontology, what exists, based on the word ontos. And how do we know it? Epistemology, from the word epistos, which means know. How do we know? So if there's a realm that is knowable, that's ontology, and we know it through our faculty of nous, that's epistemology. Two big words that are fun to carry around with you to make yourself sound smart, to make your logo sound convincing, but also to understand what it means when you hear other people use those words. So we want to understand what is knowable and how do we access that faculty, and that faculty through which we can apprehend being is ousia. We have an ousia. It's called the eye of the soul. You can see physical things through your physical senses. You can see ousia things through your ousia sense. So it's the nature of being. Socrates points out, hey, all of these things we seek, beauty itself, justice itself, it has a hyparxis in self-ousia. It's its fundamental nature. But also, It's the faculty through which we can see. So there's another possibility of that doubling up or tripling up. Ousia through ousia. Beauty is beautiful because of beauty. Greatness is great because of greatness. Or great things are great because of greatness. Ousia is known through ousia. Oh, we have a start. If we notice there's a pattern of triads and you've got 3, fill in the last one. I won't do it for you, but see if you can imagine if you can make a triad out of that. If what's knowable is ousia, if our faculty of knowing it is called ousia, what would the third thing be? To complete that triad, because we've seen a pattern, and that's part of reading too. Looking for patterns allows you to ask questions, discover questions. So, and what's interesting is that that is a kind of way of discovering questions. Can you ousia it? Can you turn it back upon itself? Can you say beauty, beauty, beauty? Can you say greatness, greatness, greatness? In some way. It's a kind of puzzle that we're discovering, which is cool, which is fun. Okay, and so let's try it. Is there a puzzle in Socrates' anecdote for how to move from everyday lover of learning? You're not chasing Instagram fame. You're not chasing those big bucks. You are interested in learning while you're here. How do you move from learning to philosophy? Learning about the opinions of the physical world. And hey, you could be a good debater. If you know how to manipulate opinions, maybe you can get voted into office. Manipulate opinions. If you can mess with opinions or manipulate the opinions of judges, maybe you can win a debate. How do you go from opinions, hey, maybe get tenureship? My opinions are the opinions of Hegel's, therefore, give me a job at your college. How do we go from that to philosophy? Love of wisdom. And that's one of our questions. What exactly is wisdom? We know it's one of the virtues. We haven't quite nailed it down. We're getting clues, again, patterns. Socrates talked about the virtue of temperance, the vice version of temperance. The commonly understood idea of temperance or sound-mindedness, even-temperedness, is to master some of your desires to be mastered by others. Look how even-tempered he is. He's mastered his drinking problem, so he can be a better gambler. So he can, I don't know, get rich. So he can womanize more or something like that. So this is a clue. He's giving us one, but we know that there is a triad of virtues: sound-mindedness or temperance, courage, and wisdom. And of course, there's a fourth, justice, which kind of sits above, but you could include that as well. So of these three, hello and welcome to the chat. Can you fill in the rest of the puzzle? You've discovered a question. What does real temperance seek? If you can find that, you can create a hypothesis. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. You can join me in chat, by the way. We stream these live on Twitch. Create a hypothesis of what wisdom might be. What's the desire that we should be seeking, says Socrates, that would make the actual virtue of sound-mindedness or temperance? Well, Socrates is giving us clues to answer that in his outline of what his life has been like. What is the doctrine of philosophy? What is our purpose here? What is the one spiritual tradition, the true spiritual tradition? What do we need to do to incarnate well? What do we need to do to take with us into our incarnation? All of these things. And we've seen certain key terms. We have to reach nous, and we do that through dianoia, understanding, kind of understanding. And that's a kind of understanding that's defined by understanding, trusting, and following the logos. So maybe we can put the logos in there as the actual virtue of temperance. Not mastering your gambling so you can be a better drinker, but mastering all of those physical desires so you can seek the logos. Maybe. It's a hypothesis. We don't know yet. But we carry it with us. And then we try it out. We'll see if it fits. See if it's consistent and harmonious with everything else we're learning. Push the implications, the consequences. Let's try it. Okay. Could the virtue of wisdom, the planning part of your soul, be following and using the logos in your thinking and planning? Ooh, kind of does fit, doesn't it? Kind of sits with dianoia, kind of sits with our purpose and the proper practice of philosophy. Notice, we don't know yet. It's a hypothesis. It's the best one so far. And this technique of thinking in this way, Socrates just gave us. Okay, in the text when Cebes is like, can you prove that we're going to survive this death? This isn't our last incarnation. Socrates says, I'm going to give you my personal anecdote for how I got into this, because you have to learn it. You can't just trust me. You have to learn this yourself. The art of the logos. And he explained this. Develop a hypothesis. The loftiest you can use. We would say the highest vision and understanding that you can use. Follow the consequences. We would say division. Divide it up. How does it relate to other things? Is it harmonious or discordant? Can you imagine a better hypothesis that is more sufficient? This is the way of thinking Socrates is telling us to do. And it's pretty good. I mean, if we are in the realm of opinion in this physical world of time and space, opinions are hypotheses or ifs. It's not knowledge. That applies to being. You don't know for certain. You can, have the Dunning-Kruger effect and believe you know. That's just ignorance or prejudice. Cause of a lot of problems, by the way. Might be the cause of all problems because it's the shadow of being, but let's put that aside. If this is the realm of developing our hypotheses, then we're learning the right way of doing it. We're learning how to think well. Socrates is teaching us how to think well. And he's relaying his own experience for how he worked this out. Play with my lights. I'm a bit pasty. Okay, that was from an episode or two ago in the text. And so let's put that together. Let's create a hypothesis. What's our hypothesis? Maybe one way of discovering questions in the text is applying this ousia technique. Push the consequences or implications. Division. Okay, let's try it. Is there a puzzle to be seen in this? His description of causes. That's what we're on. He was let down by the teachers of the time because they could not give causes. They did give some causes. It's true that he would not be sitting here if he didn't have bones to hold him upright. So what's the puzzle? Why was Socrates upset? Why was he let down? Was not sufficient? Why was he not satisfied? Well, he said, "Dem bones would be boning away somewhere else if I did not think it was best, most good and just to be here." So this is another cause. Interesting, we've got two causes. So what's Socrates doing to propel him from this realm of becoming opinions, the cause of human ills, to the actual standard for truth, understanding, justice, and virtue, the meaning of life. Well, an aspect of it, we have to reach there, it's part of it. And our purpose for being here, how do we make that jump? Let's use our hypothesis and use the key word and turn it about upon itself. The same way Socrates gave us a clue, beauty is beautiful things are beautiful because of beauty itself. Greatness is great because of greatness. And that one that ousia reaches ousia. Don't know, finish it yourself. So what's the key term in what we're reading now? Causes. Causes. Okay, should we apply this hypothesis that this can be a way of discovering questions? Socrates presented a cause that was more worth pursuing because it was more cause. The cause of Socrates becoming a philosopher was taking causes and looking for the most cause. Getting there. The cause for Socrates' jump into becoming a philosopher from just simply learning is looking for the most causal cause. I think we got it. Wow. Why? Well, does it work? Push the implication. See if it harmonizes with what we're reading. Here's what Socrates says. This is how you think. So you should be thinking. Is Socrates' decision that it was more best for him to stay more causal, more of a influence over his other causes, like his bones and his sinews, than simply his bones and his sinews? If this cause changed its mind, interesting, we're talking about mind, would those other causes follow suit because this is more causal? In metaphysics, we say it has greater scope, and therefore it's more metaphysically primary. So if you imagine a ladder, the ones at the top have an influence over the ones at the bottom. This is hierarchy. Is there a hierarchical order of causes, with these being most causal over those, and those over those, and likewise? Does it work? Well, yeah. Socrates said, if I had thought, if the cause of my deciding it was better to be somewhere else, if that was present, these bones would follow suit. They would follow that. So, Socrates is saying, use my personal experience, my anecdote from my life, and figure it out for yourself, and then pull it together and present it back to me. Before he began this conversation in this section of the text with Cebes, he said, do this. And that's what we're doing. We did that yesterday as well, on that first argument of the immortality of the soul. But now we're doing it with this, causes, with his search for the second cause. The thing that he mysteriously seemed to have left. He said, I'm going to show you my personal experience of my second search for causes. Like us, people in our world ain't doing this. Nobody's looking at the higher level of cause. People just say, oh, physical things cause things. Yeah, it's just the back and forth of opposites in our physical world. People do stuff because of behaviorism, avoid pain and seek pleasure, that's it. Or it's just physical explanations, we're all just billiard balls in space, we're all just atoms bumping into each other, that's the cause of things. Socrates was facing the same problem at his time too. Sometimes he'd come across a teacher like Anaxagoras who would use the word mind, but he would not go into the causes of those level of causes. He would jump very quickly back into the physical world. And also he would not look at the causes of mind, the causes of mind causes. He said, hey, these causes are one thing, but the conditions for these to be causes are a whole different level. So he realized that they weren't really on the ball, saying too in our world. We are in the exact same situation, which is why there is so much, one reason why there's so much inequality and fascism and exploitation in our world, because people look to physical things and that's where they stop at causes. There's no consideration for what's most good or most just or best or most beautiful. There's no talk of art. If we're here to develop an art of the soul, what is that? Which is a higher cause. Where instead, how can we maximize profit? How can we exploit the physical energy and life force of other people for my own short-term benefit? That's literally the dialogue we're having, and we are literally playing out what Socrates predicted 2,500 years ago. This is the kind of problems you're going to have. Ignorance, barbarianism, irrationality. It's irrational to ignore causes. It's, oh yeah, just hurt people. That will cause them to be better. Just exploit people. That will cause them to contribute to society. Just gather all the wealth and sit on it like a dragon. That will cause what? Society to be more good? No, we don't talk about that. So we are in a similar situation as Socrates. So why did he drop this personal anecdote of his second search after this first one let him down? Teachers of his world. What happened to it? Now he's talking to Cebes about whether or not the soul is immortal and indestructible. Hey, welcome to the chat. Good to see you. What happened to it? Unless it's still there. We just have to do the work to find it, to see it. Okay, what's he doing? What's he doing when he talks about mind? And can we use our hypothesis of this use of ousia? Beauty, beauty, beauty. Greatness, greatness, greatness. Cause, causal. Could his second search for cause be a list of causes, looking for what is most causal? Could this be his jump? Could this be the second search for causes that allows for his jump that we need to find out and figure out so we can apply it to ourselves, so we can benefit? And if Socrates can do it and we can do it, that's two. What's two? Two's enough for a pattern. Why do we care about patterns? Because we can take those two patterns and see if there is a cause of that pattern, of these two examples. If there are two examples, there must be something more causal, more hierarchically arranged on the list of causes that causes Socrates to be able to make that jump, to cause you to be able to make that jump. And therefore, if we can go to the cause, we could apply it to anyone, to allow anyone to make that jump from being bound in ignorance and human problems because you're stuck in the physical world of opinions, to actually being able to ask the question of what we are here for, what is the true nature of the good, the beautiful, the just, and our cause for our existence, our purpose. Why were we made? What is our first cause and our final cause? Our destiny. Which means we would be able to help people break their shackles or chains to human suffering and ignorance, individually and as a byproduct, collectively as a species, benefiting an individual and the human race. What's that called? Art. To go from the particulars to the cause allows you to establish a more causal principle that you could apply to anyone wherever you meet them, at any point in history, in any planet you might happen upon, if you become a spaceman and travel to distant galaxies. because that's what an art does. Just like if you're a doctor, you use the art of medicine and apply that to whoever walks into your doctor's office. That's what an art is. So if Socrates is saying you have to develop the art of logos, but he's not telling us how, is he dropping the ball? What's he doing? Is he going senile in his old age? Or you have to develop the art of logos. Let me tell you about my jump to philosophy through my second search of causes, which he then dropped. Again, is he going crazy? Now I'm going to talk to Cebes about a particular, whether or not the soul is immortal and indestructible. Two is enough, balloons. Two is enough for a pattern. Two particulars. Lots of balloons. Which means you can jump to the cause. Second search for causes. The cause of the two particulars. More causal cause. There's our ousia. And if you can find the cause of the cause of these two individual arguments, the cause of the soul being immortal, the cause of it being indestructible, then we can follow what Socrates is doing. And if we can understand the cause of what he's doing, what allows him to function in that way, another jump, causal jump, we're going to understand the principles of his art. So did he drop his question of his second search of causes? No. He hid it for us to discover. Did he drop his explanation of how to develop the art of the logos? No. He hid it within that. Like a good movie, there's the main story, there's the second twist or the second level, and then there's the third one. Like we talked, this one, anyone who goes to the cinema can, I don't know, let's pick a movie, Inception, can follow the main narrative. But then you go home and maybe you watch it again. Then you go on YouTube and you see a YouTube channel that talks about, there was actually the real question was whether or not Leonardo DiCaprio was actually the one asleep. And then if it's a good film, there'll be a third level that may only be discovered, not, by 100 YouTubers straight after, but maybe 5-10 years down the line. So that's a little triad. If you're a screenwriter, play with that. But in a similar way, you guys, the greatest defect happens if you don't learn the art of the logos. You need it to judge human beings, and if you don't, you'll be let down, especially by your loved ones and those dear to you, and you'll end up hating humanity. But more important than that, if you don't use the art of the logos to judge arguments, follow and understand artfully the arguments, you may end up hating the logos, which is the greatest defect of the soul. And the consequence will be the worst. You won't reach truth in being, which is what we are here for. Think of anything. You seek justice in the world. Don't you got to know what justice is first? Where is that? In being. You got to know being. You're interested in beautiful things. Don't you want to know what actual beauty is? You want to join with those beautiful things? Can you join with them in the physical world? In a very limited way. In ousia, you can join completely. You want to join with them eternally, immortally? Is that going to happen, or do relationships end? In other words, you can only reach it in being. You want to decide what's the best thing to do while you're here? Well, you got to know what the good is. In other words, anything we do requires us to know and understand being. And Socrates says, if you hate the logos, you will never get there. That's why it's the greatest defect of the soul. The biggest problem we have to be on guard against. Therefore, the most important thing we can do would necessarily, again, using a hypothesis, pushing the implications, see if it's beautiful and sufficient and harmonious and necessarily and beautifully, the best thing we can do according to this reasoning is master the art of the logos. He gave us enough to figure it out for ourselves through developing a hypothesis, seeing the implications, and seeing whether they were sufficient for us. What made them sufficient? It was necessary. It was beautiful. So he's saying, hey, you got to learn this, and this is how you learn. And you won't know you have to learn this unless you do it. You've got to match me. You've got to come to where I am. You can't sit on the sidelines. Philosophy ain't a spectator sport. Get on the court and play ball. Let's go. And he's been saying that all the way through. He says, does anyone else want to pick up this logos? Earlier, Cebes says, I've got this fear that the soul might just be a physical byproduct, like harmony from a guitar. Can you help me out, Socrates? Socrates said, hey, that's a good logos. Or, no, that's a decent argument. That's a good problem. Anyone else want to swing the bat? Get out of the bleachers and swing the bat too. Earlier in the conversation, Cebes was like, I'm not familiar with this idea of learning as remembering. One of the 4 proofs for the immortality of the soul given earlier. In the first round, round 1. What happened? Cebes jumped in. I'll give you a demonstration of the dialectic on the learning of the soul. And it was great. He gave a definition, he gave a demonstration, he gave a division, and he synthesized it together. Bam, bing, bang, boom. Cebes said, okay, I'm with you and I trust you guys. I'm a good faith actor. Like I actually want to learn and I trust you guys, but I'm not quite following. So can you break it down now? In other words, don't just define the dialectic of learning as remembering, but demonstrate it. Apply it through a dialectic, one-on-one, through questions and answers to bring me up so I can see it for myself. And of course, Cebes wasn't at that level of mastery of the art of the dialectic, which is the art of the logos too. So Socrates jumped in. So Socrates is wanting us to swing the bat, even his friends. He said it many times through the text. And that's what we have to do. We have to get in the game. We have to match him as best we can in our loftiest way. So we would say, with excellence, seek excellence, our highest vision and our highest understanding. So he said, hey, the greatest defect of the soul is if you don't use the art of the logos to judge humans and particularly arguments, because you won't reach truth and being. But we had to jump in and say, well, actually, what's the significance of truth and being? It's needed for our initiation. It's needed for our incarnation. It's needed to know justice. It's needed to know beauty. It's needed to transit for virtue. It's needed for phronesis. Oh my God, it's the best thing. It's really the only thing we're here to do. It's our main purpose. But we had to work that out for ourselves. He gives us the negative. We have to see the positive. We have to play. He's given us a puzzle. We have to develop the art of the logos for these reasons. So that's the most important thing. How do we develop the art of the logos? And then drop that, started talking about the search for causes. Drop that, and started talking about whether or not the soul is immortal and indestructible. What happened to these two? The most important thing he dropped? That means it's a bad text. Socrates failed. He definitely should reincarnate because he's got a lot more work to do. All that stuff about him knowing nous dianoia and therefore trusting hierarchical levels of cognition, by the way, that he is going to go to a better place. Nah, he's missed the mark. Because he dropped the most important thing. How do we learn the art of logos? And then he dropped the second most important thing. How was his second search for causes something which elevated him from the physical world to being? Needed for all of those things we mentioned earlier. Now he's talking about whether or not the soul is immortal and indestructible. Or embedding those more important, hierarchically more encompassing, more causal, our greatest cause for our existence is to master the art of the logos. The greatest cause for us moving into philosophy so we can do that, the second search for causes. Have a greater scope over the cause for him talking to Cebes. The cause for proving the soul is immortal and indestructible is to what? That's the question we're on. Why is Socrates talking about the immortality and the indestructibility of the soul? Why? Because ousia. This is in the section where he's talking about causes. Apply it. What's the cause for him doing this? Did he forget his life's purpose, his highest cause on his last day? Oh my goodness. He's going to reincarnate as a donkey. Or he's holding on to it. He's just embedding it for us to be able to see it if we get on the field, if we play, if we can match him. And how do we do that? It's not telling us. But he is saying, I searched for a greater cause, a more causal cause. What does that mean? A hierarchical level of causes. What's a hierarchy indicative of? A paradigm. A paradigm is an intellectual, it involves an intellectual, understandable, hierarchical list. Let's say medicine, this is a more healthy body than this, which is a more healthy body than this, which is a more healthy body with cancer, which is a more healthy body which is dead. There's a hierarchical order, has to be, for there to be development within an art. Same thing with spirituality and human evolution. So if there is an art, there must be a paradigm, which means there has to be key terms arranged in some sort of hierarchy, which we can understand. Therefore, key terms hierarchically arranged in an order. That's what is needed for understanding. It can't be an art if you can't understand it. This isn't an understandable or intelligible universe if it didn't follow this. So if there's an art, we have to be looking for these things, which, incidentally, we have been doing the whole time. So whether we knew it or not at the beginning, we were on the right track. It was a decent hypothesis to start with. The hypothesis of, where's our little man? Here. Our hypothesis of what it would mean to read and be a philosopher. Seeking excellence. That sounds like your loftiest vision and understanding in your hypothesis. Key terms in an order. There's our hierarchical arrangement that can be understood. This more causal of this, more causal of this, more causal of this. So, let's write this down. And bottom here. If there is an art of the logos, This is most causal, our greatest cause. Oops. The same way, if Socrates thought it was better for him not to be in prison, he would move his physical causes, his bones, to be somewhere else. It's more causal. It has a greater scope. So this is cause. Cause for this conversation we're in. He also says his second search for causes. It's another cause that he said. I'm going to talk about that because this is to do with the movement from the realm of becoming or opinions to being, which is dianoia and nous, or philosophy. So this is another cause. And now we also have to prove the soul is immortal and indestructible, which is another cause for what he is saying, what we are reading, why we are reading, how Socrates is functioning. Remember, we can go right back to the start and see the questions that was asked by our the guy who started the text. Socrates asked Phaedo, what was the logos and what was the activities and what kind of death? So there's a triad. What were his logos? What was his actions? And what was the death of Socrates right at the end? So this is what he's doing. These are his logos. This is what he's functioning as. This is his activity. Why? Why is he? What's the cause for him sitting there and having this conversation? Couldn't he be hugging his wife on his last moments? This is our question. What is the cause for us even reading it? Pause. But hang on a second. We have a list of causes, therefore we can arrange them into a, where's my pen? A hierarchical, H-E-I-R, hierarchical order. Like that. What's that needed for? A ladder. Remind us of anything? The ladder of development and the shadow. This is the cause of the ladder leading to destiny. This is the shadow, cause of our problems leading to our fate. The art of the logos is to recognize where you're at or where you're stuck, somewhere in this arc. Maybe you're here. No, that's very high. Somewhere in here. For there to be a ladder, there has to be a terms hierarchically arranged. And that's what we're getting. Right? So we need this in order to use the art to determine where you're at on this ladder and also its shadow or its distortion, so you can see the nature of the person's problem. What brings them out? What distracts them? What gets them talking nonsense? What gets them hating on themselves? Because that's going to prevent their progression or focus or interest in going up this ladder of hierarchical orders or causes. So not only are we developing a hierarchical order of causes, but we're having an understanding of what this ladder is. It's a more causal. More. Let's move it over here. Or what is more causal? So this is where we are at the text. So we're reading, but we're keeping in mind our own causes. Why are we reading this? Why are we even watching this podcast? We want to know the truth. We want to become better people. We want to know the meaning of life. We want to escape the cycles of reincarnation. We want to understand this ladder of spirituality, so it's not just all airy-fairy or woo-woo, or it's not just materialism, meaningless. So we can understand our own progression, our own development, our own evolution, our own purpose for being here. That's why we're reading it. How do we do that? This is this cause. So that would be a high cause. Why are we even here to begin with? Whatever brings you here will be your own. I want to understand spirituality. I want to understand philosophy. I want to understand me. These are all good reasons for being here. In the text, how do we get those? How do we actually do that? We have to develop the art of the logos, master the art of the logos. So that would be up here. How do we do that? How do we get from, because the art of the logos is not something you can master through opinions. You can't go to a science teacher. You can't even, because of the hierarchical order of evolution playing out through time, even if you go and study philosophy at university, you are almost never or almost guaranteed not to find it there. The same way Socrates was not able to find teachers in his time doing this. So how do we get from the realm of becoming or opinions or everyday experts to be able to focus on being dianoia and nous from the world of becoming or opinions? That's the second search of causes. How do we make that jump to become a philosopher? So that would be there. So we've already got 3 causes at least for us reading, 2 of which are in the text. And then the final cause, the more explicit, the narrative or the story that anyone who goes into the film will be able to follow, is we have to prove the soul is immortal and indestructible to help Cebes. But even Cebes shouldn't just be following it through trust or opinion, even if it's Socrates. Like, if you were to trust anyone, it would be Socrates, the smartest, wisest, probably person to ever walk the planet. Someone who's literally completed his work here and has evolved. So even Cebes shouldn't trust or have the opinions based on someone in the world of becoming Socrates is telling him. Socrates has been saying all the way through, follow the logos, don't care about Socrates. It's easy to contradict Socrates, it ain't easy to contradict the truth. In fact, the logos, when Socrates says it, Socrates turns around and watches it, as though it ain't coming from him. So how do we get from someone in the realm of becoming, Socrates, and just trusting him, to this? That's one of the causes here. That's that third cause in the text. Fourth cause if you include your cause for even watching this podcast to begin with. We have to keep them all in mind. What are we learning? A hierarchical set of causes. So what could this second search of causes mean? It could be Socrates is looking for this list. He started by realizing there was more causal causes. His mind, his decision of what's just and what's good and what's beautiful is more causal than his bones. So that could have propelled him in, and maybe in this quest, in his second search for causes, he might figure out, hang on a second, what I'm looking at is this, a hierarchical order of causes. I'm figuring out there is a causal chain with these being more causes having a greater scope and influence, or metaphysical hierarchy, we could call it. Which leads us to another thing. If we've realized this is a paradigm that's universal, because it's the Logos and it has an existence and being. Therefore, we can apply this to our highest goals. Maybe there is a more causal nature even beyond being. Maybe this hierarchical development of causes is how you can understand the unfolding of reality and our return. So really, one way of understanding our destiny could be asking, what is the first cause? And if it's an unfolding and return, what is our first and final cause? And what the heck does that have to do with the self? So with all of those causes in mind, so we're not going to we've already gone through the immortal, now we're doing an indestructible. That gives us 1 and 2. That has enough for us to jump to a high level of cause. So we can understand what Socrates was doing. And also, is there a paradigm that even he is following that we can understand for the art of the Logos, because that is the greatest cause in the text at the moment. Yep, it's good to find out that the soul is indestructible. Great. It's good to find out how Socrates made that jump from becoming and opinions to being and truth. But the highest cause for us right now is to develop the art of the Logos. It might be the highest cause for us to be alive. This might be our purpose for being alive. What was Socrates' question in his second search? Why are things the way they are here? What are the cause? Could be this. So, with all that in mind, all of these understanding and these hypotheses and these questions, again, they're only questions until you can reach that more causal level of reality, which is knowable, nous or ousia. So for us, in this realm of becoming, we can develop dianoia, but it's just a hypothesis until we can verify it. But what's interesting is Socrates is saying, hey, this is the way we open our mind to nous. This is the gateway. This is the purification of the soul. So while it's good to have dianoia, it's much better than opinions and needed for an art, it is also the doorway to nous, which is what we really want. We want to know reality. Experience it often, so much that we have it in our bones. Get it? Because bones is one of the lowest causes. But if we climb that ladder through dianoia and direct experience together, it can be ours, and we use that expression when it's ours in such a way where it's ours through experience and obviousness through understanding. We can say we have it in our bones. So bones can refer to this, the lowest, but also the highest. That's why I'm very funny. If you didn't laugh uproariously, it's because you are ignorant, not because of me. I explained why I'm so funny. Philosophy humor. Right, that wasn't really funny. It was just, something fun. Right, we want it in our bones. So, to have it, we have to carry this with us in our question. With all these under our belts, let's jump into the text and see this and the causes for it. Let's go. So here we are in the text. I like this expression. There's no worse for hearing often. Kind of the motto of this podcast. Okay, what next, O Cebes? Here we are. What next, O Cebes? If it were necessary that the uneven be indestructible, could it be in any other way that those that are three are also indestructible. So it finished with the previous argument, the soul brings in life. Therefore, that which does not accept the idea of even is uneven. That which does not accept the idea of just is unjust. That which does not accept the musical is unmusical. And that which does not admit death, the soul, because it brings in life, is immortal. If that is the case, that the soul does not accept or receive death, she does not. Therefore, the soul is immortal. She is immortal. Well said. Shall we say, on the one hand, oh God, that I hate on the one hand so much, that this has certainly been proven, or how does it appear to you? It is most sufficiently proven, Socrates. Okay, next. Oh, cool. If it were necessary that the uneven be indestructible, could it be in any other way than that those that are three are also indestructible? Right, so 3 was our example. 3 brings in odd, so it can't be even. The word for can't be even is uneven. That's the analogy for soul brings in life. Life can't be death. Therefore, to can't be death is undeath or immortal. So can also be indestructible. So if the uneven, if you've already defined it as uneven, then those which and uneven is indestructible, then therefore 3 is indestructible. Let's try that. Oh, yum, orange. This is good. How could it be otherwise? Is it not so that if it were necessary that the unhot also be indestructible, then when anyone brought heat to ice, the frigidity must withdraw and unmelted and remain preserved, for it could not be indeed destroyed, nor in turn could it survive and accept the heat.
Flibbity gibbity nonsense.
What does that mean? Okay. If the unhot is indestructible, so we've got 2 things on the go. We've got the not one. So we've got the name and the opposite of it. So we've got 3 is odd, but it's also uneven. So cold is also unhot, because cold can't accept hotness as an idea in being, definitionally, or in its nature. So if the unhot is also indestructible, then when anyone brought heat to ice, ice carries cold, and therefore it will withdraw or destroy when the presence of the opposite of what it carries. So ice carries cold, cold can't accept heat, therefore ice can't accept heat. The cold must withdraw unmelted and remain preserved. Okay, so the idea of cold is not destroyed. Wouldn't it be terrible that if you had an ice cube and you started to heat it up with a little lighter, then coldness would be removed from the universe as a principle, as an idea, as an aspect of being and a cause for the realm of the becoming. So it's not cold that is melted. Cold remains preserved, for it could not be destroyed, but nor can it accept the idea of heat. Cold can't be hot, but cold itself won't melt. The ice might melt. What you say is true. Okay. It could not. So that's coldness. I don't know why he's saying frigidity, but we can say cold. I believe that if it were also necessary that the uncold, like fire as an example, can't be cold, be similarly indestructible, then whenever anything cold came upon that which is fire, it could in no way be extinguished nor destroyed, but it would be gone and also depart preserved. Why are we talking about this, about being melted or destroyed? Because we are asking the question, is the soul indestructible? Or is it destroyed? Same way ice is melted. Okay? So if fire was indestructible, then if you put ice on a fire, it wouldn't be extinguished or destroyed, but it would go away. It would still be fire, but would go away. But that's not true. Fire would be extinguished. So this is a hypothetical. Or he means the principle of fire. Let's see what he means. Is he saying this is wrong? Because, of course, if you put cold water in a fire, it's extinguished. Because he said if. Let's keep reading and see what he's saying. Oh, nice. Is it not also necessary that it be said in this way about that which is immortal? That if, on the one hand, the immortal is also indestructible, therefore it is impossible for the soul to be destroyed. This is what we're after. This is one of the causes we're carrying. Remember? One cause is to prove the soul is indestructible. We needed to carry that. Otherwise, we're going to be lost. Hold on to the causes. Otherwise, you're aimless. If you're aimless, you can be pushed around by the aims of others, by the way. Which ain't good. So if the immortal is also indestructible, there's our if. Therefore, it is impossible for the soul to be destroyed when death comes close to self. For surely then, on the one hand, oh my goodness, these hands. I should stop complaining. I need to find a way of editing this format and take out all these one hands. It's too cumbersome to read. She will not accept death, nor will she ever die, just as from what has been said before, those that are three will not ever be even, nor in turn, we said, will the odd. So the three that carries the odd, or the odd itself, would never be even. Then, neither will fire ever be cold, nor will indeed the heat in fire. Okay, so the principle of hotness can't be cold, but also fire that carries it. Yet if someone were to say, what is there to prevent the odd from not becoming even, when the idea of even approaches it, while the odd be destroyed and the even come to be instead of self. Okay, so these are one of the conditions that we've seen. When the opposite approaches, the thing either withdraws or is destroyed. So if we go back, we'll see here we go, perish or withdraw. So these are our opposites. So earlier when we were showing the immortality of the soul, Socrates kept immortality, indestructibility open. He said, look, if the soul brings, if like fire brings in hot necessarily, when you introduce the opposite of hot, both heat and fire withdraw or perish. It doesn't just leave, maybe it also perishes. Maybe it's destructible. So he kept that window open through the past argument. Now we're closing that window. Is it perishable? So what's to stop? Okay. Further down. No, here. What's to stop the odd when you bring in even? What's to stop the odd from being destroyed and the even coming to be instead? We cannot contend against one. Oh, nice. We cannot contend against one who holds on to this belief by saying that it is not destroyed, since the uneven is not indestructible. So necessarily we haven't yet shown that uneven is in its nature indestructible. Since if this were conceded to us, then we could easily oppose them by saying that at the approach of the even, the odd and those that are three, so both the idea and those that share in the idea, like beauty and beautiful things, life and the soul, at the approach of the even, the odd and those that are three have gone far away, and we could not contend in the same way for fire and heat and the others. We could oppose them. Okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense right now. The wording is, of course, Greek, so it takes some work, but let's keep reading. Maybe if we read on further, it will shine some light on what he's talking about here. Is it not so then, if it is now agreed by us that the immortal is indestructible, then the soul being immortal would also be indestructible. Okay, so it's like logic, basic logic here. But if it is not so agreed, then we will need another logos. It seems we haven't agreed. We want to show that it's immortal and indestructible. So there's if the immortal is indestructible, but that's not an if we're allowing yet. So we need another logos. But there is indeed no need for another one, as far as that goes, says Cebes. For surely, how could anything at all not accept destruction, if immortal? Being everlasting accepts destruction. So it seems like he's saying, well, if immortality, which means everlasting, accepts destruction, then everything will accept destruction. Nothing will escape destruction, because even immortality itself, which is supposed to be everlasting, if that accepts destruction, then everything is going to accept it, like the gold standard for escaping destruction. Thus, I think that all would indeed agree that God and the idea self of life, the eidos, self. I like this expression because it really encapsulates in a phrase the essence of metaphysics. Things that we see as adjectives in the world of becoming, like life, are, oh man, it's so dark. Let's make green. No green on green. How about purple? Have its existence in an idea, which is also, and it also has a selfhood. So we can say that there is an idea, which is an aspect of ousia, which means to behold. It also means the honorific, which is the ideal. So it has an idea self. Interesting. I mean, the idea self of life is a good encapsulation of how to understand causes, metaphysics. And that besides, any other being that is immortal can never be destroyed. So both God and the idea of life, and any other being that is immortal, can never be destroyed. Certainly then, by Zeus, absolutely every human being would agree to that. And also, even more so besides the gods, as far as I am concerned. Since then, the immortal are indestructible, then any other being besides soul, if it also happens to be immortal, would be indestructible. So this is the reasoning. This is the punchline here. How could anything at all be free from destruction if immortality, being eternal, can be destroyed? Therefore, all of the things we give the name immortality, like the soul, would be indestructible. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, on one hand, it kind of makes sense. Immortal does mean everlasting, and so it can't be destroyed in its word. But Aren't we supposed to prove two different things? That the soul is immortal and indestructible? Maybe we live in a kind of universe where immortal can be destroyed. No, then it wouldn't be immortal, would it? I don't know. Kind of, it does work, but kind of feels a bit cheap to me for some reason. Then, on the one hand, oh goodness, upon the approach of death to human beings, the mortal part of them dies, as it is reasonable. But their immortal, deathless part goes away, being preserved and undestroyed by withdrawing from death. Okay, if we've already established that the soul is immortal, because it brings in the principle of life, and life withdraws from death, then so too would it withdraw in a preserved way. So it's immortal and indestructible. Then the soul, O Cebes, is most certainly... Oh, and by the way, it has come to light for Cebes. That's one of the questions we're carrying. Why this expression comes to light? What does that mean? Why is that the metaphor that's being used? Then the soul, O Cebes, is most certainly immortal and deathless. Immortal and indestructible. And our souls will really dwell in the realm of the unseen. Hades, afterlife. There's our conclusion. What was what it all hinge on? Nothing could at all could be free from destruction if the immortal, being everlasting, is destroyed. So if we were lived in a kind of world where the principle of immortality accepts destruction, then nothing would be free from destruction. All metaphysics would collapse, but also the word immortal couldn't exist either. Yeah. Therefore, the conclusion. Cebes says, at least no longer have I at least no longer have anything else to say against that, O Socrates. Nor can I in any way distrust the Logos. Interesting. He seems to be still on a level of trust. Isn't he supposed to be learning the art? Graduating from trust to understanding and developing an art? What's he doing? Yes, illuminated. Why that as a metaphor, coming to light, when you've seen something? But if Simmias or anyone else has something to say, says Cebes, it would be well that they should not keep silent, as I do not see to what further opportunity other than the one now present they could pull it off, if they wish to say or hear anything on these subjects. So maybe our distrust in the logos of the argument is highlighted in Cebes' conclusion. He doesn't distrust. That's not the same as saying he does understand. Keep in mind, we're carrying our causes with us. This is important. You don't want to be rudderless in your life. You want to have a goal. You want to seek your carry with you at all times. By the way, that's a sign of a problem. Dropping your cause Why was I here again? Why did I walk into this room? I just walked into the kitchen. Why did I walk into the kitchen? Oh, well, you've dropped your goal. Dropping your cause or your purpose is a sign of a problem here. So we want to learn our causes. This is what it means to be rational. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What caused me to be here? And why was this best? Like, what am I here to do? And where am I going? These rational questions. We've got to understand and also know it, somehow verify our understanding. Develop an art so we can seek that goal, seek that cause, but we also have to hold on to our cause or goal. Why are you here? Why did you go into the kitchen? Why were you born? Don't drop that, because some other doofus with their own problem is going to come around and try and recruit you into serving what they think their cause is, only their cause is not with the art of the logos. Join my cult. I'll tell you what your purpose is. Join my business. Make me rich. Hold on to your causes. And we're holding on to our causes. We want our highest causes. We want to master the art of the logos. How are we going to master the art of the logos if we're just simply satisfied, if it's sufficient for us to not distrust the logos? That's the level of trust. We want to go beyond trust. So maybe this is one of the causes of why I was not, or we were not, over the moon about this reasoning. If immortality accepts destruction, then everything would, I guess. But is there a better course of reasoning that we can develop as part of an art? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too pedantic and that argument was sufficient. Maybe. Let's see if Cebes has something to say. Because, by the way, now's the time to say it, he says. Socrates ain't going to be here tomorrow. Cebes says, but truly neither do I in any way indeed distrust from the logos that was spoken. Nevertheless, in view of the high importance of the subject which is under discussion, yea, he sees the stakes, and my low valuation of human frailty, I am bound to still have distrust on behalf of myself concerning what has been said. Thank goodness, because I'm kind of distrusting this argument. Low valuation of human frailty. Yeah, okay, maybe immortality can't accept destruction, but maybe, have you seen how much humans suck? Humans can suck. Maybe they do die, even if immortality doesn't. Of course, not completely worthless. As Socrates said, if we had a competition of who's completely on this line, there'd be very few winners. We're somewhere, but hey, people have problems. And those who are given cushy positions in the world where they're told their ignorance is great, they can play it out in a very terrible way. And we are seeing the implications of the lack of the art of the logos in human history right now. So yeah, I also share a low valuation of human frailty. So I have distrust on behalf of you, Cebes. You might have come along, but not me, okay? Socrates says, not only that, O Cebes, but also the first hypotheses do not do indeed still require clearer examination if they are to be trustworthy to us. So now we're getting a standard for trust. What does that mean? Well, our theme today is hierarchical causes. We can take this ladder of hierarchical causes and say we can do the same thing for, remember, ontology, what exists? Ontology, from ontos, which is what exists or is, and epistemology, or what we can know, or how we can know what exists, or cognitive functions or cognitive faculties. Therefore, Socrates is saying, hey, we need a better reason for trust. So we could take this and say trust is a certain level of epistemology, but he is saying there has to be reasons for trusting, meaning, what's another word for reasons? You got it, causes. There must be, if there are reasons for trusting, another way of saying that is there are greater causes for trusting, which means we can make a hierarchical order as we did with causes for trust, for epistemology. So trust would be down here and there would be something greater. Maybe dianoia, maybe nous. And that's what Socrates is pointing to. You can't just not distrust. You're still down here. You're still at the level of trust. You see, if you stay there, you're not going to develop the art of seeing where people are. You're going to develop the worst defect of the soul, and you won't reach being, which is one of your highest causes for your existence, for you being here as a person, as a human being. I haven't heard that song. So interesting. If you also thoroughly discuss selves in a sufficient way, there's our standard again. So maybe I wasn't off the mark when I felt like Cebes was insufficient. As it appears to me, you will follow the logos as far as human is able to do so. Wow. That's cool.
Wow.
Why? Because this is a way of understanding philosophy, following the logos. So the art of the logos that we're here to master would enable us to not just trust the logos, but understand it and know it and use it in an artful way with mastery, so we can follow the logos to our destiny. So all of these things that have a hierarchical order, causes, destiny, epistemology, hey, maybe everything, all of the key terms of philosophy, ontology, maybe this is a way of understanding the logos, because the logos is that which is sound and true and understandable, to use the section from before. Meaning if there's a paradigm a universal paradigm, giving us the art of all arts, well, an art has to have this hierarchical order that has terms which have scope and causes that can be understood with our human mind. This is necessarily part of an art. So if they all follow the same kind of structure, if you can see the same kind of thing in all of them, you're learning the logos. So whatever you want to apply it to, all you've got to do is recognize the equivalent or the analogical terms. Hey, when we're talking about causes, we can find an epistemological equivalent. Hey, we'll find a ontological equivalent. Just like we talked about with this ladder here, we said we can take the human quest to destiny and say each of these on this rung are levels of understanding, but there will be an equivalent term within this hierarchical ordering of causes in states of mind. So you can say it's a development of understanding, so it's the intellectual tradition, but it's also a spiritual tradition because this level of understanding has an equivalent over here. If you're if you're a nihilist, if that's your understanding of reality and yourself, you will be depressed. If you're a materialist, you will be empty. If you're a relativist, you will be lonely, and so on until you get to the states of enlightenment, experiencing being at different depths. And then maybe even if you take the dianoia with you into the realm of being, maybe you can go to levels that are beyond even enlightenment. To go beyond the Buddhist ox herding pictures, as has been said before. So this is what we're after. So, keeping that in mind, if you thoroughly discuss selves in a sufficient way, you will follow the logos as far as a human is able to do so. And if this self becomes clear, you will seek no further. So, keep talking. If it's worth saying, it's worth saying many times. Keep this quest going. We're on the right track, people. Do I get anything but 2 thumbs up? Confetti? Oh, we get fireworks. We're on the right track. So, we are following the logos. So all of those levels of hierarchical development is following the logos. Following the ordered structure of hierarchical terms to the highest. But Socrates takes it one step further. Hey, by the way, if this self becomes clear, what self? The logos, you will seek no further. Follow the logos until you reach the logos. Then you won't have to seek. Why? Because you'll have... Ooh, thanks for the follow, hot dog. Because you'll have that which will allow you to understand anything you look at. By definition, it is this. If it is sound and understandable and universal, if that's what the logos is, if that's what dianoia is, the very thing, by the way, not just what it is, what it isn't, the people who claim to be smart without the art of the logos, after Socrates, because of human history and because of the way the world is without the logos, they claim that there is no understandable. Everything is just opinion and belief. So allow religion, allow voting, allow a surgeon to go into his waiting room and say, hey, let's have a vote on where I should perform the incision. That kind of nonsense. Of course, we don't allow that for medicine or architecture and so on. Only for systems where people want to manipulate and abuse and take advantage of others, like politics and religion. Interesting. I wonder why. Anyway, if there is actually an sound understandable paradigm of understanding that can unite all humans, because you don't have to pick sides. Doesn't matter what color or gender you are. Anybody can understand if they play the game. Then that's what we're after. By the way, if it is a universal paradigm, it must have its self-existence. It must have its existence in being. So not only is it the each ladder, epistemology, ontology, states of mind, types of understanding, levels of causes, understanding music, you name it. But for it to function as a paradigm in the realm of becoming, it must have a higher causal existence in the realm of being. What does that mean? That means not only is the logos intellectual or understandable, it's intelligible, which means both understandable and knowable in nous. So it may be, we talk about all of the beings that are knowable, like beauty, justice, goodness, equality, greatness, a whole list that we're interested in philosophy. We've talked about how there is a hyparxis called self-ousia, but maybe we could say, hey, all of those self-ousia terms leading towards its peak could be hierarchically arranged also. Can something be just without it being beautiful? Not really. But can something be beautiful without it being just? Maybe. These sorts of questions. Oh, but can it be beautiful or just without it being good? Definitely not. So good would be higher, have a more of a scope, more causal. Therefore, if we start to ask those questions, which have come up naturally because we are thoroughly discussing selves. What we just do, we thoroughly discuss selves. Then this question comes up. Which is more primary? Which is more causal out of all these ideas? For us to ask this question must mean that this hierarchy, that goodness, that beauty, that justice have their places in, that hierarchy itself, or the logos / dialectic, must be higher even than all of them for it to allow all of them to be on its ladder. Meaning, not only is the logos one of the beings that is graspable in nous, one of the self-ousia beings that are immortal and maybe indestructible. We're still on that argument, but maybe. Not only is it one of them, it may be right up at the top. Necessarily for it to give the paradigm of the ladder that all of the other beings can touch. Isn't that cool?
Wow. 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 Wow.
If that's the case, maybe we can see more significance in what Socrates is saying, that if you thoroughly discuss them, would it be thorough if you gave up without understanding each of the terms and their hierarchical list and the way in which they have a causal influence, not just what they are, definition, but how they function causally? Not just how they function, but how they function to all of the different others to others, or thoroughly discuss might be another way of saying dialectic. Don't just define the self-logos, how does it function? Not just how does it function, but how does it function to all of the others? Hey, how does logos more causal and hierarchically up than justice or goodness? Okay, and by the way, so logos is more hierarchical than justice. How does justice affect beauty? With the logos now, others to others. What am I saying? Okay, let's write that down. Well, let's get rid of these scribbles first. Scribble, 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 scribble. So okay, so we're learning the dialectic. So if we want to have the logos. So if logos is, which is side A, we also have side B. If it ain't, we can say define it. Self to itself. What is the logos itself? Demonstration. How does it function self to others? So how does self relate to, how does the logos relate to justice? And then the next one is, hey, this justice that has logos in it now, because logos is more causal, more hierarchically arranged. How does division, how does justice, this other, relate to other others? How does justice relate to beauty in being, now that this justice has the logos in it, because the logos is more causal? So we'll say more causal as one of the definitions, one of the things we can say about the justice logos itself. And then, okay, well, justice would inform beauty with the logos, giving an understandability to justice, more hierarchical because it's on the logos. So you might see a beautiful person, but they might not be just. But if someone's just, that might be a high standard of beauty, these sort of questions. And then finally, synthesis, analysis, or others back to self. How does justice and beauty relate back to logos? Okay, given this dialectic, you see something beautiful because you have an understanding, because you've done this little exercise. When you see something beautiful, how can you use your experience of beauty, wherever you see it, to relate back to the logos? How can you use, hey, are you just going to have pleasure? Is it just going to be a nice experience? Oh, something beautiful. Who cares? Or are you going to use beauty to relate back to what is more causal, the logos? Every time you come across something beautiful, having done this, and I encourage you to do it in your own document or notepad app or whatever, every time you see something beautiful, can it help you grasp the logos better? Ask questions about the logos. Why? Well, actually, hang on a second. If this is more causal, it might be worth doing. It might be using your experiences of beauty to better learn about the logos. Especially since one of the causes we have to hold on to in our whole lives, according to Socrates, is how do we develop the art of the logos? So every beautiful experience might not just be a distraction anymore from our purpose, making us a lover of the body or lover of pleasures. No. Maybe because we've done a dialectic on how it's the logos is more causal and therefore can relate to those underneath, therefore can function towards these others. Maybe what could have been a distraction or vice, nailing our souls to our body, can actually serve virtue, which might give us more ideas on how to answer that other question that we've been carrying. What the hell is Socrates talking about, not getting wrapped up in food and drink and sexual stimulation if he has a kid? It's one of the first things at the start of the text. His wife had a baby boy on her knee. It's like what is he, 60, 80 something? He's an older man with a kid. Don't think that happened through immaculate conception. So how do we understand this? Don't get wrapped up in the pleasures and pains, especially the pleasures. It's the worst thing you can do. That's a self-imprisonment. Oh my goodness. Well, hang on a second. If we're doing this, maybe our experience of beauty won't be harmful or vice, but can relate back to the logos. What's that? Others back to self, which is relating back to the first thing you've defined to see it more fully. So maybe that will help that question. Good thing we were carrying it in our question sack. The question sack. Pretty cool?
Wow. 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 Wow.
Okay, so what does that mean? Well, Socrates is saying, thoroughly discuss. So this thoroughly discuss has more significance to us because we're on the playing field. We're not in the bleachers. We're swinging the bat. We're taking the catch. We're doing the pass. We're playing. We have to match Socrates. So now when he says thoroughly discuss, you and I can look at each other and give you the old wink wink and say, oh, we know what he means. How would you thoroughly discuss something? It might just be this. Bingo, bango, bongo. The dialectic, which might be a fundamental part of this, a fundamental part of the Logos. He did mention dialectic once in the text. Curious, why only once? Okay. But also he's giving us more clues. So thoroughly discussed in a sufficient way. By the way, when have we been using the word sufficient? Well, that's when we get back to here. Every time in the text so far, Socrates has given a definition, given a demonstration. Someone like Cebes says, oh, I don't quite follow, divides it up. Then they bring it all together. And then after this step, they say whether or not it was sufficient or not. Which was our question from before. Did it change our minds? We can't stay ignorant. We can't stay prejudiced. We want to learn and grow. But we can't be foolish and be manipulated, especially by anti-logos people or haters or people who claim there is no logos, there is no being, and there is no art. Throw a rock, you'll find someone like that. So one of our questions is, what should change our mind? The term that refers to that, and we've been developing a dialectic on that. We're getting key terms. It has to be necessity. It has to be beautiful in some way. But the key word is sufficient. So whenever we come across the word sufficient, it seems to be in this step here. At the end, whether or not you sufficiently changed your mind. So these same words, like we talk in a movie, like Inception. I don't know if you've seen Inception. It's about dreams and Leonardo DiCaprio, isn't it? When he moves his wedding ring, because we have an understanding that that's his totem, it has a significance. But to someone who hasn't been following the story, maybe he's remembering his wife, or he's just nervous. Similarly, people who just read this in a cursory way, or, just for fun, or without this translation, or without this way of reading, they will say, oh, thoroughly discuss selves in a sufficient way. Oh, that's probably just funny Greek speak for have a chat. No. Thoroughly discuss for us now means dialectic. Sufficient way means something at the end of the dialectic to change our mind. That's the way this key word is being used. Every time he drops this key word, we could take a note, we could do a word search, and we could see, oh, by the way, that's repetition. What's repetition? Repetition is a mark of beauty. You got to have this I repeated on this side. Hopefully in a meaningful way, or a symmetrical way, or an ordered way, an intelligent way of some kind. So you don't have the I way up here or something. Wouldn't be beautiful. So if we see repetition is understandable, if we see beauty is understandable because we've done a dialectic on how the logos relates to beauty, if logos is the paradigm for understanding, then we can say beauty is understandable. Wow. Which means if we see repetition in the text, we can understand, oh, by the way, that's a mark of beauty. Not only that, this last section, how does beauty relate back to the logos? We can see these repetitions or this beautiful way of structuring the text or Socrates' thinking and use it to unpack the logos. Oh, that's interesting. We don't just sit there and smile. That's a beautiful way of arranging. No. He's giving us clues because we want to master the logos. So we can go back and pull out all of the times he uses the word sufficient. Oh, what do you know? It's at the end. At the end of this dialectic, synthesis and analysis, somebody says, was it sufficient or it wasn't sufficient? In fact, we just got there. We just saw, has it been sufficient for you? Cebes says, I can in no way distrust the logos. So he didn't even use the word sufficient. So he was not in the game. He was at the level of trust. Socrates reminds them, hey, what about the word sufficient? What about the dialectic? What about mastering the art of the logos? So, because of this, we see because logos is more causal and affects justice and beauty, beauty can then help us to unpack the logos, which allows us to realize, oh, by the way, sufficient is a beautifully or repeated word through the text, repetition through time, beauty through time, that allows us to understand not only that there's an interconnection, there are clues, there is an understandability, but we're specifically understanding the logos. Because the word sufficient happens to be here. So it points to the dialectic, which is the complementary part of the logos. So that's a duad. We've done some duads last time. We could say logos and dialectic is a duad. Where are our duads? We made a list last time. Here we go. Ontology and epistemology, nous and dianoia, we can say, hey, here's another one. Logos, dialectic. Add that to your duad skill tree. Your swords. So what are we doing? Collecting terms and the pattern and the order. So back to the text. Self will become clear. That's interesting. What were the two words he said? The reason why pleasures are a problem is because you will mistake it for what's most real and clear. So that helps us with our question. He can still participate in pleasures so long as he doesn't mistake it for what's most real and clear. So this self, so the logos has a self that can become clear. Not only that, you will seek no further. What does that mean? Well, if the logos, we can add this to here. If the logos it is knowable. Well, it has to be for it to be hierarchically within this list. So we've got beauty. I'll make some more room. Zoom in a little bit. We've got beauty. Got justice. We don't know yet. These are all hypotheses, so I put a question mark. Goodness. Maybe logos? within this ladder? Necessarily. Therefore, we can see that logos is one of the aspects of being, therefore is knowable. We have a question. Seek. By the way, if you reach beauty itself, don't you also want to reach justice itself? Don't you want to know goodness itself? By the way, if you have beauty itself in Nous, if you have justice in Nous, if you know goodness directly, don't you want to know how they relate to each other, others to others? Because that wouldn't be a sufficient understanding if you didn't also know how they're related to each other. So the question is, why would you seek no further upon reaching self logos? That's the question. If you reach justice itself, you would keep seeking because you also want to know goodness. But if you have justice and goodness, you also want to know how they relate to each other. But maybe, possibly, it's a question. So we have a hypothesis. Socrates is saying, if you thoroughly discuss in a sufficient way so that you reach the self of logos in being, you will seek no further. Maybe because if you reach the logos in Nous, you have all of those, because logos necessarily is more causal or encompassing. Not only that, the logos is the paradigm for ladders itself, whether it be causes, whether it be destiny, whether it be epistemology, whether it be ontology, whether it be spirituality, whether it be systems of understanding. If logos is the paradigm for all things, including the aspects of being, then when you reach the logos, you will seek no further, because you have all of those terms and the structure. That is the universal or the paradigm. Therefore, you wouldn't need to seek any further, because you have the understanding of understanding, the dianoia of dianoia, and the nous and dianoia of you have the nous and dianoia of nous and dianoia, because logos is understandable and knowable. Knowable as the highest aspect, and understandable as the system of all systems, the ladder. So maybe that is why Socrates is saying, if you thoroughly discuss in a sufficient way that can change your mind, and you reach the understanding and the selfhood, the nous of logos, you will seek no further. Meaning, extra stakes for this cause that we are carrying as the greatest cause. It's a kind of final cause, maybe. That's interesting. And of course, we take that as a hypothesis, which is a kind of dianoia, until we can experience it and verify this for ourselves. You're really dropping some truth bombs on our asses. Not only is it the most important thing that can prevent the greatest defect of our soul, the art of the logos, needed for our evolution, needed to solve human ills, needed to solve the problems of our soul. But by the way, when you get there, you can have a nice rest. You've gotten there. It's achievable. You have the understanding of understanding. You have the paradigm, both in understanding and experience, because logos means understanding, but it's a selfhood. It has a paradigm, and it's the hyparxis. That also opens other questions, because one of the things about a hyparxis, because it's the fullest, it's the highest aspect. The highest aspect of our consciousness or soul reaches into the realm of being. So the more we learn about hyparxis, the top of the ladder, more questions will open for us. So if we're looking for that part of the soul called self-ousia, we've got our desires, we've got our honor seeking, we've got our physical senses, we've got a love of learning, but we want to get to here, awaken our self-ousia through dianoia, through the mastery of the art of the logos. That will awaken our self-ousia. Why? Because that is the thing that knows. If all learning is remembering, then pretty much all learning is some part of the art of the logos to trigger our remembering of what we once knew in self-ousia of the realm of being. So what do? We find a principle, we apply it to the next level. That's anagogic thinking. So maybe if there is a hyparxis of being to do with the top of the ladder, maybe that will reach to a level beyond being. So if there's a level beyond being, beyond beauty, beyond justice, beyond goodness, maybe we can take the art of the logos with us in our back pocket. If that's what he means by we will seek no further. If that's the case, that is another level of importance and stakes to the art of the logos. So hopefully you're building a list, a dialectic of the art of the logos. It's the art of learning. It's all learning. It's what awakens our soul. It's what we need to awaken the highest aspect of our soul. It's what we need for our incarnations. It's what we need for the virtues. It's our single purpose in our life. It gives us a unitary purpose in all aspects of our soul. Every aspect of your soul can seek it. Therefore, it gives you what you need for harmony. Therefore, it gives you what you need for sound-mindedness, courage, and wisdom. The virtues, which we just saw as harmony. Not only that, it can give you, it's what you need to understand all of the things when you get to the realm of being. So when we do separate from the body, we're doing a kind of something there, which is our other question. What do we do once we're out? Well, you have a freedom from the chains and distractions of your physical body and your physical senses. You're not a slave to it anymore, which gives you the freedom to do philosophy better. What would that be? Seems to be the art of the logos. So when you're at the level of beauty and goodness in this level of being, you're also using the art of the logos with you in your back pocket to understand what's going on, but climb that ladder to reach logos itself, which might be, if it's a seeking, you don't have to keep seeking beyond that. If it is the hyparxis or the most causal or hierarchically ordered, then this art of the logos you've been developing with your virtues here, you take with you into the realm of being, allows you to climb the ladder in being. You meet a Buddhist on the path, meet a Hindu on the path, meet a Taoist on the path, because they have different levels of experience in that. Climb past them. Okay, that's an analogy because, we have the logos, but forget about others. Take that art of the logos with you, that practice in the virtue, which might be why we call it the phronesis virtue, into the level of upgrade that virtue into phronesis perhaps. Use that art of the logos that you're taking with you to climb that ladder to reach the paradigm needed for the art of the logos in the hyparxis of being. But if it's the hyparxis of being, you might be able to see, because you have understanding of principles, that because it was a principle here, it's probably going to be because hyparxis was a principle to get from becoming to being, it might also be a principle, if the principles are more causal, to go from being to beyond. Therefore, use the art of the logos not just to experience reality or being or enlightenment, but the hyparxis of it, and use the art of the logos to realize as a principle that when you reach the hyparxis of one level, you can take that with you, or it is the way up to the next level. So it allows you to move from the realm of being to that which is beyond being through the art of the logos, but also taking the art of the logos with you in your back pocket. Therefore, if even being has a cause, remember Socrates says, these causes in being or mind, they're being neglected, but hey, so I need a teacher who talks about these, but what's good, what's just for me to sit in this prison cell. But hey, not just that, but the conditions for causes to be, That's 2 levels that these people are neglecting. So he's already said that there is a level beyond these causes in being. If that is the case, that there is a cause even for being, that is unfolding causally being, that unfolds causally the physical world, and we are returning. But in this world where we are in time, in reading, in this podcast, in reading this text, in developing our virtues through practice and habit, we are learning the art of learning the art of the logos. That's what brings us into the realm of being, and it's the hypoxis of being. That's what we can take with us in our return. Maybe giving some more meaning to the question, why the heck are we unfolding to experience this physical world of all these opposites and all of the terrible things that follow in a physical human society without the art of the logos until they pick up what Socrates left us? Why go through all that if we're just going to return again? Well, hang on a second. Maybe we're not just returning again because of this principle of the hypoxis that we're learning through the art of the logos. We are returning with the art of the logos that we learn here in our back pocket. Therefore, we're returning back to this level beyond being of the one self or good self or the self with the art of the logos. And there might be a significance to that. And maybe that is needed to see how this whole process has... Get rid of all these scribbles. So not just that's needed for this big question of why unfold only to return, especially if we see the suffering of the opposites in the world of becoming, particularly the opposite of having the art of the logos. Maybe all that's needed to see how there is a beauty in the whole process, a kind of justice in the whole process, a kind of goodness in the whole process, because we return back to the oneself with the art of the logos in our back pocket. Maybe that's a big fat if, but a good one that we can carry with us. And it also adds a lot more stakes to this question here. What the heck is the art of the logos and how do we master it? Because not only is it our purpose here, it is probably the purpose for the realm of becoming. If Socrates is saying once we reach the being of it, the selfhood of it, we will reach no further, and also might even be needed to go beyond even reality, beyond even enlightenment, beyond the causes of things. Huge stakes. All in that if. So let's see what Simmias has to say, because Cebes did not. He was happy to stay way back down here, not even in the realm of being, in trust. He was not interested in developing the art of the logos. He didn't say it was sufficient. He was saying, I don't distrust. So hopefully Simmias has something better to say, because this now has a lot more weight, a lot more importance, a lot more causal significance, a lot more stakes for us now. So let's see what Simmias has to say, and if Socrates can add more clues to this problem for us. On that bombshell and on that cliffhanger, I really hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me. You can join us in Twitch when we record this in real time, ask your questions. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. If you think this is worth sharing and you have the means to support it, you very much appreciate it if you can support on Patreon. And you can find the texts for free in a link below. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this has got you puzzled and as excited as I am about this, because holy crap, isn't philosophy amazing?
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jarvis. Allow me to introduce...
Okay, no, sorry. That was Jarvis.
Wow.
Okay.
Come on, man.
Okay, I'm hitting all the wrong...
That's one for the blooper. That's one for the blooper reel.
I hit all the wrong buttons. But yeah, exciting. Isn't philosophy rad? I think so. I hope to see you next time.